Welcome to the first chapter, and here we're going to talk about what is a computer or a tablet or a phone, and what are the basics behind some of these, just to give you a small overview of what a computer does. And we start off by really talking about something like the four-stage model. And what does that mean? Well, central to all of this is a central processing unit, and that's the thing that does all the work on our computer. And some of these now might have computers and tablets might have more than just one CPU sharing the load between them. But if we just look at the one and look at the type of work that it does to begin with and what's going on, you'll get the gist of how things work. So the four-stage model basically starts off with our central processing unit right in the center, and we call it a four-stage model because there's four different parts that we can add to it really. First of all, we've got something like the random access memory that lives inside the computer. And this is where all the information is stored in between being used backwards and forwards. So the very first thing that we've got is the computer, the processor that works in conjunction with the random access memory, pulling information off, bringing it in and sending it back again. And we'll see more of this a little bit later on. The things we've got to remember is, what are the four stages? Well, number one, as we've said, is the CPU and the computer itself. Second to that comes input, because we have to have ways of putting information into this so it can process the information, because at the end of the day, that's exactly what the central processing unit does, or what computers or tablets or phones do. They process information. And in order to process that information, we have to find a way of getting that information in. And following that, once it's finished, we have to have some way of showing us that processed information and what's happened. Whether it's sound, whether it's pictures, whether it's text, whatever it is, we have to be able to see that information or hear that information or see the difference of what's gone on once it's been processed. And then following that, we've got some sort of external storage. And what do we mean by that? Well, we can't hold everything inside the random access memory. And the reason random access memory is called random access is because as soon as we switch the power off, it's refreshed, which means we lose all that information. Now, who wants to keep going back and typing out the same old letter over and over again? So what do? We save it to external storage. In the old days, it used to be a hard disk, and these have developed over the years. It used to be floppy disks, then micro disks. Now we're looking at things like the universal service bus drives that we can save information. And even though we still call them disks, a lot of these are really more like flash memory, solid state type of memory that we use. But nonetheless, these are still external storage. Tapes can also be used for external storage. So there's our four stages. Now, when we look at computers, we've got to realise that all they are is automatic electronic machines. Nothing more, nothing less. But instead of just having one switch, they have many, many switches. So it's a bit like your washing machine or your Hoover or your light bulb. You switch it on or you switch it off. But the difference is we have billions, lots and lots, or trillions, millions of these switches going on and off in synchronization with each other. So what you have to remember is that it's your slave. It does what you want it to do, even though I'm sure some of you sometimes feel that isn't the case and find it very frustrating. But the point is that if we put garbage in, we're going to get garbage out, because it will only process the information as we ask it to. So you put in garbage information, you're going to get garbage information out. G-I-G-O, it's the old saying. And it still stands true that you have to get the right information in. Now, we've also got things as things have developed, things like Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, 4G, 5G coming up, and USBs as part of our input. And that type of input can come in from lots and lots of different things, lots of different ways these days, not like it used to from just certain selected areas. So what do we mean by input? Well, what we mean is zeros and ones coming into the machine. And these could be anything. They could be music, videos, whatever, text. But at the same time, we have them going out once they've been processed. So let's have a look. We've got internet streaming that's input. We have videos that can be input. We have audio that can be input. Keyboard is an input. Images input. And as it comes in, this information is digitized. What does that mean? Well, that means it's turned into strings of zeros and ones, on and off switches. Why? Well, because that's what a computer understands, zeros and ones, machine code. It doesn't understand what a picture is. What it understands is the zeros and ones that make up that picture. And then what it will do, it will take those zeros and ones, it will process them, and guess what? Produce zeros and ones and at the other side. And then these have got to be then fed out to the output, which of course could be the same as what we've seen before. It could be streaming something up to the internet. It could be a video, it could be audio, keyboard, or images again. But what we have to remember is that as we stream things in and as we input things in, they go in as zeros and ones. And in order to do that, they have to be translated. Everything that goes in is translated into zeros and one, i.e. digitized, and then it's worked from there and processed, and the output of that is zeros and ones, but they're interpreted by the output machinery. Just like with input, we have to have a way of interpreting all that information into zeros and ones. And once we do that, we have to then interpret the zeros and ones when they come back out again. So it's all about zeros and ones. Now, if we want to save any information, then we'd put it onto our external storage. So we write out a text that we haven't quite finished off. We then save it to our external storage. And when we come back up in again, we can load the whole thing back in again. So there's our 4-stage model. Input, output, external storage, and central to all that is our central processing unit that does all the work. So what type of things do we use for external storage? Well, hard disk was the old days, we said before. USB now, the USB sticks that we use. It could be up in the cloud now because more and more things are being stored up in the cloud, streamed out and stored up in the cloud. And I count that as the same as external storage. Now, what we also have to think about is, well, how do we get this information in? Well, we have to have some way of taking that information and pushing it through and digitizing it. Now, in the old days, we used to have things like serial ports, parallel ports, and you used to have cables all over the place. And some applications might use serial ports, some applications might use parallel ports, and they might do it in lots of different ways. But the advent of the USB, the Universal Serial Bus, really gave us a standard interface. So a standard way that any electronic item or anything that was digitizing something could stream information into the computer. So we only had one way of putting things in. And of course, that's our interface that allows input to go in, but also the interface that allows information to come out. So manufacturers of these electronic equipment that took all these either videos or audios and streamed them in zeros and ones all now conformed to this universal serial bus that everything used. And now you won't find serial cables or parallel cables. You'll just find the one way of inputting things, and manufacturers work to that. And also one way of taking it out, which is why now we have this universal serial bus so that everybody works towards a standard. So that's our 4-stage model. That's what a computer basically is. So any of you guys out there who sometimes feel like they're technophobes, you can always switch these things off. So we've got the hardware and we've got software, and these are the two components that make up the computer system. And we'll have a quick word. Hardware is basically anything that you can smash on a table or throw against the wall, which often you might feel like doing. And software is the electronic bits and pieces, the switches that will take this information and use the hardware to display it or to take the information in. So software is really our key element. If we didn't have any software and we just had hardware, then when we switch the machine on, nothing would happen. The keyboard wouldn't know how to talk to the computer, the screen wouldn't know how to display information, we wouldn't be able to do anything with it. It'll just sit there and blink at you. But because of software, and more importantly, the operating systems, which we'll have a look at a little bit later on, we can now utilize this hardware that we call our computer, or our phone, or our tablet. That's our 4-stage model. That's the basics. That's how things work. So just remember, you are in control. Anytime you get to feel that you're a technophobe, remember it's you who's in control. At any moment, you can switch the thing off. We'll see you in the next section.